In Paris, as we mentioned earlier, enrollment data released today shows a steep drop in the number of students attending Chicago public schools, about 10,000 fewer than last year. But the district is also boasting a record high graduation rate at a time when the ongoing pandemic has intensified the challenge of keeping students engaged. And this is also a time when CPS is under new leadership, with a former graduate taking the helm after serving more recently as head of San Antonio's public schools. Joining us now is the new Chicago Public Schools CEO, PEDRO Martinez. PEDRO, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So as we mentioned, the official CPS enrollment numbers came out today showing 10,000 fewer students this year. What do you think accounts for that decline?
You know, what we're seeing in the data is that we had a larger than normal number of students that transferred out of Chicago, as well as we have seen already for many years, just lower birth rates. So when we factored in children that graduated, which as you mentioned earlier, we had a record graduation rate this last year. But when you look at children coming into the system and you net that out with children leaving the system, we were down just a little over 10,000 students.
What do you plan on doing, or what can you do to reverse that trend?
So, you know, for me, you know, I'm just about to finish my first month and, you know, and I just have a lot of questions. As I look at each of our neighborhoods, we have 77 neighborhoods, and I'm very proud of our city that, you know, we are a city of neighborhoods. I want to look at neighborhood by neighborhood, what happened in terms of enrollment, but even questions around the quality of the programming. Do we have a clear standard of what every child in CPS should be receiving? And with that standard, what does it look like neighborhood by neighborhood? Because one of the concerns that I have, or one of the questions is, are children leaving our district because the quality programming isn't as accessible or as consistent across every neighborhood? And so those are questions that I'm asking that over the next month, I will be bringing more information to the community and then developing a plan with them around how do we move forward to both address not only the enrollment declines, but making sure their children and that they feel good that their children have access to a high quality programming.
Now, the district has also taken some criticism for what is believed to not be doing enough to protect students and staff from COVID-19. Give us a brief update, if you would, on where you all stand with regard to testing and contact tracing.
You know, when I started in the district, I could feel the anxiety for both our staff and our parents. And so, you know, my first few weeks, I spent, you know, just a significant amount of time on this. I've been doing, for example, media events with Dr. Awadi, partnering with our leader in the Department of Health. And what I can tell you is, first of all, our contact tracing, our COVID testing significantly has been ramped up, significantly improved from when we started the school year. And I'm seeing COVID cases at an all-time low. We have been hovering less than 200 cases per week for students. And remember, we have over 330,000 students in person almost every day. And with almost 40,000 staff, we're seeing well under 100 cases of staff having COVID. With that, though, I will say this: we are quarantining way too many students. And that is not what I'm hearing. So I'm hearing less concerns about safety. I'm hearing more concerns from both my staff and my parents about the fact that we're quarantining too many children. And so in the next few weeks, we're going to be working with the Department of Health and following, you know, national and state guidance about how to use COVID testing in a more strategic way so that we lessen the quarantine of children.
Now, the district's relationship with the Chicago Teachers Union has been strained, to put it mildly. Are you hopeful that you can mend fences, and what is that relationship like so far?
Well, you know, I was able to have dinner with both Jesse and Stacy, the leadership of the CTU. And, you know, what we talked about is just, you know, since the time that I've been gone, there's been a lot of trust that's been lost over the last decade. I've been gone for about 12 years. And we both talked about how do we start rebuilding that trust. And so we made a commitment to at least continue to talk, to meet on a regular basis to discuss issues. I think we have more things in common than we have apart. So that's going to be my goal. My goal is to work with them. They are a critical partner for us in terms of as we move the work forward. And I want them at the table. And so, you know, that was my commitment to them is let's at least meet, let's talk. We'll have differences, but I think the majority of the time we'll have more things in common.
Okay. CPS also released its yearly report card recently showing a record high graduation rate as well as a record low dropout rate. And almost all students having developed a graduation plan as a part of the district's Learn, Plan, Succeed program. To what do you credit such a low dropout rate, especially during the second year of a pandemic when engagement is a challenge and enrollment numbers have already fallen?
So first of all, I couldn't be prouder of our high schools. Last year, one of the things that I saw in our data is that we had almost 6,000 12th graders that were disengaged. They were at risk of not graduating. And the high schools leveraged the relationships they had with our students. One of the things that I'm seeing across our high schools is the relationships. When I talk to our students and I ask them, do you have somebody in the school that you can trust, that you can go to when you're worried about something? And I'm hearing consistently from our students that they do. And we're seeing it in the data. When you look at even our enrollment drops, our highest numbers of enrollment are in the high schools because the children are not dropping out, they're staying in school. I'm seeing amazing programming across the high schools that are engaging the children, pathways and things like in green energy, like solar tech, but as well as computer science, IB programs, fine arts. And so I think all of these items are contributing. And when you look at our graduation over the last 10 years, before I left, our graduation rate was it was under 60%. And now we're well over close to 84% on a 5-year graduation rate, on a 4-year over 80%. And I'll tell you, districts our size, you don't see these kind of high graduation rates, but not only that, almost 70% of our children are going to college. They're generating over $1 billion in scholarships. So I'm just very proud of our high schools, but of course, it's a team effort between our elementaries and our high schools together.
And Pedro, a little bit about your background. It's in business and nonprofits rather than the classroom. And before joining CPS under then CEO Arnie Duncan and serving as budget director and chief financial officer, that's what you did at the time. How does all of that background inform the work that you'll do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been very blessed. So I started on the business side and the operations side of the work, but I'll tell you, I was mentored to really go into the academics. So when I ended the first time I was here at CPS, I was actually supervising a group of schools on the west side. And then I went to become the number 2 leader, overseeing academics full-time, principals, teachers, redesigning curriculum, creating new school models. And I did that for many years before becoming a superintendent. For the last 12 years, that's what I've been doing. It's really focused on academics. And so now coming back to Chicago, I have the unique blessing to be able to understand each of the roles. But I'll tell you, to this day, am still humbled by the work of our teachers. When I walk into classrooms and I see our amazing teachers engaging our children, helping our children that are struggling with rigor or they're struggling with a specific assignment or a certain standard, I am just humbled by just their amazing work. So I will always humble myself with our teachers, but I also feel very blessed that I have a well-rounded experience, and it's going to serve me well in this role.
Chicago is moving towards a partially appointed, partially elected school board. First election scheduled for November 2024. You, of course, have experience working with an elected school board in San Antonio. How do you think that shift will change CPS here?
It's all I've known as a superintendent and CEO is elected school boards for the last 12 years. I've had 2 superintendencies in San Antonio where I was there almost 7 years. I had a 7-member board, fully elected. And even though there was turnover with different elections, I never had less than a 7-0 vote. And so that's been the experience I've had. For me, I think it's less about the governance structure. It's more about the individuals and us having a clear vision for the district and being aligned in values. For me, my values here in Chicago, it's about equity. It's making sure that every child has access to quality programming and that everybody has access to be able to reach their goals and their dreams.
And Pedro, before we let you go, we know that recent CPS CEOs have often served for a relatively short time, probably with the exception of your most recent predecessor. Are you hopeful that you'll have a long tenure?
The whole reason I came to Chicago, because I was doing very well in San Antonio. I had a 5-year contract there. It had been renewed and extended twice. Like I said, I had a board and a community that completely supported me. And the only reason I came was not only to come home, but I wanted to make our district better, to build on the success that we've had in the past. And what I asked for was the longest contract that I could get. And I have a 5-year contract. And if you go back 10 superintendents, 10 CEOs, you won't find somebody with a contract as long as this one. And so that's what I feel very blessed, and I'm very grateful to Mayor Light for giving me this opportunity. And I am going to be a champion for our children here in Chicago.
And Pedro Martinez, I know that you had your first board meeting this morning. I can see you were still in the office there, so a long day for you. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the show again soon.
Thank you for having me.